know, like
Uh, like
when?
like in a minute or two. It when I click the button, it takes like a minute or two to actually you know, get
Okay,
going.
well, why don't you click the button and then let us know when we're actually live?
You're live now.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, it's April 21st. It's a cold spring. Everybody, welcome to our I think it's our fourth Education and Wellness Committee of this school year. And I asked Dr. Macaluso to talk to us about the science program in general in our district from K through 12. I had a really a specific reason for requesting this presentation tonight. I think, as some of you know, I myself am, I was actually an active research scientist. I am now science writer, and I think that the our country as a whole is having a bit of a crisis in terms of its pool of young of generating a pool of young and enthusiastic and well-prepared scientists to really enter academia, pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, all other kinds of tech companies. And so a science education, in my mind, is important for three reasons. First of all, even if you don't go into science as a career, it helps you to become a critical and objective thinker. Science education makes for educated consumers. You can't be bamboozled by various ads if you know what you are looking at and what you're looking for. And lastly, a science education does inspire certain students to actually go and seek careers in science and technology, which is really sort of become a driver almost of our civilization and of our lifestyles. So Greenburgh, like hopefully every other district in this country, should really be focusing on the scientific education of our kids. And with that said, Dr. Macaluso, you can take it away.
Wow, Dr. Dragic. So thank you so much for that introduction. You know, with that background, I can say definitely making a, I guess, speech to self or opening to self connection. This topic was also really, really nice for me to prepare for on behalf of the district because, you know, if the community does or does not know, my first degree is in biochemistry. And so, yes, I definitely sought out in the world to, you know, learn how to objectively collect data and use that data to tell a story, good, bad, or indifferent, and what it is. So what I am going to try to attempt to illustrate today is, you know, taking a look at how we're doing that here in Greenburgh, starting from our kindergarten program all the way up through the 12th grade with some less of an emphasis on examples that you would see with in the high school level because the content becomes very specific at that point. And so for me to share, excuse me, for me to, there was meeting somebody in the waiting room, for me to share examples at the high school level, very specific, you know, I'd be here for hours covering the different strands of science. So we'll give a general overview of what it looks like with our little ones using the programs that we have available in the district. And then we'll kind of see some pictures of our high school folks doing it as well. And the way I'll do that is through the course catalog and just to kind of show you how we're doing that at the higher levels as well with IB. So, and just to kind of remind the group, Mr. McCoy is finishing up a meeting with the high school where he is helping to do an orientation. So he will be joining us as soon as he is available. So if you will give me a second to share my screen. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you again, board members, for giving me the opportunity on behalf of the district to share this information. So to tell the story of what science looks like in the Greenburgh Central School District, we have to start with the New York State Education Department. And we're fortunate enough in that several years ago, they took a stab at really relooking at all the standards and, how do we incorporate science so that it does exactly what Dr. Drogic had said in her introduction, so that it helps individuals realize that, there's structure to life, there's structure to anything, and structure, patterning, things of that nature, it's most commonly found in principles or content of science. So this takes a look at what I'm calling, this is not state education terms, but this is how I'm hoping to describe it in a way that makes it meaningful and easy for you to follow, is this kind of first level at the state talks to us about the content. And so that's the science. So you see up at the top, this says life cycles and traits. So what I'm guessing at is this is probably going to be something along the biology strand. And if I take a look at it, I see 3LS1-1, 3LS3-1, so on and so forth. And the first thing this does, this tells me that this is a third grade. This is third grade content. So if we take a look at it, we see, okay, develop models, describe organisms have unique and diverse lives. Oh, so what this is telling me is that if I study living things, I can see what patterns exist amongst the living things, and the model that I can create is the story, which starts to bring us into the statistics piece that Dr. Drogic was referencing in her opening about I can't be bamboozled, right? So it helps me by looking at life science, I can then say, how do I apply that to something fictional, like an ad or something like that? The second part talks about interpreting the data, which is again part of that mathematical strand that Dr. Drogic was mentioning, but then also, it's connected to, again, the life piece above. Then it tells us that students have to use evidence. Okay, so they can't make a claim if they don't have supporting information. And so that's what we're doing in our district as well with the writing revolution process, right? Making sure that students can use different genres of writing to support their claims and how it's connected again to the science. Okay, and then the LS4 is again the evidence to conduct an explanation. Okay, so I gave a little bit of an additional key down here as well. So when I talked about the content, I was like, oh, this must be teaching me about some biology or some biology concepts. We see yes, LS is life science. You might see science standards as ESS, so that's Earth and Space Sciences. Oh, so that's like Earth Science, the high school. Physical sciences, sorry, let me just move my camera so I can see that. Physical science, oh, so if I see something coded PS, then that means it's physical sciences. Oh, it must be something like physics and or chemistry. And then if I see ETS, it might be engineering, technology, and the application of science. So what that last piece also gives you an illustration of is, again, that New York State Education Department gave us a really nice foundation for how we design science instruction in a way so that it does all of those things that Dr. Drogic mentioned in her introduction and again in her experience as a researcher. Okay, so oops, this is not okay. So at the second and what I'm calling third level of the state education department standards or design is they now have science and engineering practices outlined, and this is again for that same third grade sample that you saw above. They have some disciplinary core ideas, okay, which this kind of goes deeper into the content. So for example, LS181B, growth and development of organisms. Oh, so this tells me that like if something has a exponential growth or an exponential decay, oh, I can maybe model that as I had mentioned before. And that's how I tie in the math. Inheritance of traits. This is more of the biology concept of where we can do like a Punnett square. We could say, oh, if I cross red with white, I might get pink, but I might get all red and I might get all white. Okay, so this is laying the foundation for that in third grade. Variation of traits. Oh, so that's how I can have differences, how sometimes I can have brown hair with maybe blue eyes, rarity, or I can have brown hair with brown eyes. And then natural selection is we start to talk about how just through the process of things growing and evolving over time, which are the ones that are the most sustainable in the system. Okay, and then so the third level, which is the white down at the bottom, is, oh, oops, sorry, back. The third level, are we seeing like blue, orange, and green followed by a white box?
Yes.
Okay. because I accidentally just tabbed my screen back and I'm not. Okay, so
Yeah.
the bottom is actually where the state has also explicitly called out for us, what are you doing with this science that also touches upon ELA and math? Okay, and so those are those specific standards all mapped out. Okay, so how does this look in Greenburgh Central? So for K through 6, we're using Science 21.
Chris, before you go to Greenburgh, I just wanted to ask a question about this general program.
Okay.
Is this is just the LS, which is life sciences, is just an example, but they have these kinds of outlines for every single one of the categories that they've defined. Okay. Got it.
Absolutely. And you know what? So thank you for that. So maybe what I could do is once I put the materials out, I can add, so there's an overview of every single grade level and what's in every single grade level as far as like the
Okay.
LS, ESS. And so big picture for the community to understand is that I might not always have the same content per grade level, right? So in one grade level, I might see a little bit more LS and less ES, earth science concepts, but then in one grade level, I might see a lot more earth science concepts versus LS. And that's how they just kind of scaffold things so that we make things meaningful for students. We try to connect it to social studies and the social studies standards. Yes, and we have one of these for every grade level, for every strand of science by state education department.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? So I always like to remind our faculty and pedagogues, as well as our parents and community, that a resource that we provide is not necessarily curriculum. It is a tool to have students access the curriculum. What do I mean by that? So if we want all students to read a passage about a dolphin, well, we might have a piece of a material that they can use to read about dolphins. So that's what we have here. What are the materials that we provide for our teachers? And then how do they use their practice and their expertise to develop curriculum? So for science, teachers at K6 have Science 21, and I'll show an example of what that might look like at the 3rd grade level following that standard that I just shared. And then we have our IB units of inquiry. So that's where we have the opportunity as a full K-12 IB district to have our teachers come around and think about how do we use those IB learner profiles to design some deeper science inquiry. So that's how we start connecting things to humanities and then also the civic readiness for our students. For mathematics, we're currently using Math in Focus. We're going to be transitioning out next year, and we'll be using Ready Math for our math instruction K6. And then we also have IXL that we use for mathematics. And then we have some nice instructional technology things that we always have available for our teachers to use as part of developing the curriculum. We have Brain Pop and Discovery Ed. And so what those are two instructional technology platforms that allow teachers to access videos, images, things of that nature related to content and specifically science content.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just have another question for you. Things like what you call Math in Focus and now Ready Math and IXL, are those teaching methods like Singapore Math was at some point, or is?
So Singapore Math was the product that became Math in Focus, and these are things that publishers make. So it's things that we can purchase from a publisher to help us provide kind of uniform resources for accessing the curriculum. But we always want to take pieces of this and pieces of that and design curriculum that makes sense. So it's considered a textbook, right? It's kind of a nice way of saying a textbook.
One question for me as well, Dr. Macaluso. One thing I think a lot about is just kind of how flexible these systems are. Do all students still have to kind of operate lock, stock, and barrel where everybody's learning the same things at the same time? Or are there methods to kind of personalize if there are certain students that are accelerating or other students that are kind of lagging behind?
So Trustee Thomas, you're right on point. So that's the curriculum development. And that's the beauty of us having our faculty come together and look at all these tools and do that individualized instruction. Yes, and so how we further do that in the ELA content area where at Fontes, so at the Fontes and Pinnell, right, using that data, students might be accessing different things on a different reading level. But yes, that all feeds into this system of designing lessons so that you have everybody accessing uniform content, but the way that they show that they can grasp that content is through different pieces, different pieces, different styles, different approaches, different ways of assessing.
Just one question too, is IXL going to be the continued preferred software for math going forwards?
At this current moment, yes, we do believe that it is the product that is meeting our needs. Yes.
Have you received parent feedback on that? Because IXL is incredibly challenging, and especially through COVID, I provided feedback. I know a lot of other parents struggle with this, in that it's a good tool, but it's a bit defeating to students, because as soon as you get something wrong, it pushes you backwards. And a lot of parents have a lot of challenge with students working in this particular tool. And I don't know if that's been communicated clearly up to administration, or if people have experienced it, but it's literally like soul crushing to a lot of students in the way that this format works. So I just wanted to make sure that there was some recognition of that, because there are other tools out there that might work as effectively, that help encourage students rather than making them feel a little defeated.
Thank you for that message. Yeah, so that feedback is certainly welcomed and appreciated. And then for other parents who might be watching this, any feedback that you might have about any of our instructional tools that we are using, you may always call the curriculum. Well, first, you may always speak to your school level administration and inform them of what feedback that you have, but then you may also always share that information with us at Central in the curriculum and instruction office, because that kind of feedback of how the end user is receiving the information is actually like really meaningful to help us when we make decisions about that.
So I just want to say, I definitely hear Donna on this. I think what I remember from just having my 3 kids go through this, and these programs just constantly, I mean, there's almost like a treadmill of these programs that just never stops, is that so I don't know how new this IXL program is, but every time a new program or a new method is introduced, kids really struggle with it, right? And I don't know if it's because teachers struggle with it as well, or if it's just that we're constantly kind of pushing more and more content, further and further down, that so that, there was a time when, kids used to, learn how to add and subtract like in 1st and 2nd grade. And now it's almost like they're, doing algebra like in 1st and 2nd grade. So I was just wondering if you could kind of comment on that, in terms of why it would be that, what Donna was saying, that kids might be struggling with IXL.
I'm sorry. I wanted to agree with what Donna was saying. I loved IXL initially. I like the purpose of it. I like that you get the opportunity to practice basic skills. But I have to agree, when I was home with COVID with my son and it would be IXL assigned, and as a teacher, I used IXL and I loved it. I promoted it. I loved the rewards that you would get. But then as a parent, when I was home with my son, I saw the downside of IXL. And it wasn't that it was necessarily so difficult. I think what Donna is saying, it's repetitive, it's teaching them routine. So by the time they have to get like over, I think up to 100 to get out of like a skill, so to speak. So what would happen is they might get to 85% or 90%, and the kid gets really excited because they're like, yes, we mastered the skill. And then they get one wrong and it brings you right back down to like 80%. You got to take like 10 questions again. So if a child is struggling, my son, he does pretty good, especially in math. And there would be moments where I'm seeing him almost crippling because he would get so close, and then without fail, he'll make one mistake and all of a sudden he's pushed back down. So that's what she's talking about with IXL. It's that process that it's not the actual skills that they're learning from.
Before we move on, I have to jump in as a parent as well and just say, I would like IXL to be assessed through an equity lens. In my house, we have a slightly different learner, and IXL, each activity getting to that 100, if the power fritzes, the laptop dies, something gets distracting and you have to walk away, you lose your progress. So it's actively destructive to the children as they see their scores lower the harder they work. But then you get to these 86, 87, and the Chromebook dies, and the entire process is lost. And it's teaching resilience, but we have a wide range of learners. And if we're looking at equity, it's not a platform that's accessible to a lot of our students. I know for mine, but I've talked to a lot of other parents.
Well, so what that did is that just showed us a live example of collecting data, right? And so having that common strand heard. So again, thank you and appreciated that you have given us that feedback that will really help us to think critically about that, because yes, so students should need to develop resiliency, but at the same time, they should not be feeling defeated by a product. So thank you for that. So I think we can take some time now. Let's go ahead and so let's take a look at what this is like in third grade. So Ms. Ives may have seen this. So it comes straight out of a third grade module that was helping. So this is how our curriculum would help students access that life science standard that we just saw. So it's talking about some identical twins. So it gives them a scenario. Okay, so you have identical twins. Noah likes to play soccer, ride bicycle, and he spends his day outside. Jacob likes to play video games, read story, and spend his days inside. Construct an explanation for why Noah has darker skin and is a faster runner, while Jacob is better at solving puzzles. Be sure to indicate which the twin, the observable variation. Okay, so wow, this is like giving them a way of connecting that content to something that they might know. Okay, so what is it doing? Which is the twin? Tell us what you think the observable variation is, and then give us some evidence. Okay, so it's a little bit more text-based, which is good because it's helping us with ELA, with vocabulary. Let's see how our curriculum evolves this concept a little bit further. So the next day, they're going to look at factors and traits of things that the environment does to impact the trait that we might see. And so they're going to do this through the lens of some dinosaur eggs. So, oops, sorry. I was silly of me. I thought I could show you the video, but right, I would have to get out of this to show you the video. So we'll pause with that, and I'll just kind of say that little piece, I don't want to take the slide deck down and show you the video, but once I share the deck, you can click on it. And what that is that's a YouTube video. It's about 1 minute and 10 seconds, and it shows some alligator eggs hatching. Okay, so what are children going to do? They're going to take some data, and they're going to look at these different alligator nests. And so the images are a little bit small, and you can't really see them fully, but it does give you an illustration of what they're doing. So they're taking this information, and they're tallying it up on a graph. And so that's great because we know in third grade, we want students to be able to graph and use the graph to tell how it is a visual representation of a story. So what are they doing? They're basically counting up these eggs, and they're realizing that the eggs, when they are in a certain temperature, determines or should determine by science the sex of the alligator, if it's a male or female. Okay, so they do that for alligator nest 1, they do that for alligator nest 2, and then they do it for 4 different alligator nests. And what do they realize? That you might get all male, you might get a mixture of male and female, you might get all female. And so what that is doing is that is helping them to realize that this patterning in life, right, and for a living organism, that we maybe can make some generalized conclusions about that. And so what might it look like when our students are engaging in this Science 21 program? And so you have some pictures there where you see that students are, again, using inquiry, they're using data, they're collecting data, and they are, as we see in the bottom row, in the last 2 pictures, they're verbally talking about their data and also writing about their data and expressing it verbally. So I'm not sure if Mr. McCoy was able to jump on just yet. I see, yep, I saw his little thing. So Mr. McCoy.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
About this, sorry, I'm trying to get myself. Okay, yeah, so these, this process basically of sort of, it's basically kind of teaching the kids the experimental method at a very early age without necessarily calling it that. But I'm just wondering, when do we actually ask kids to start putting together presentations on their own? I mean, quote, on their own. Like, when do they actually have a project and then go home and kind of put together whatever is supposed to be kind of a rudimentary scientific presentation and then bring it back and present it? What grade is that?
No, I need to get some further information about that, but I can imagine that at all grade levels, even at the kindergarten and first grade level, we're doing some versions of that, because what you didn't see in here is that I've cropped it off and there are sections where they're actually writing reports. And so, there is I'm certain, being in our classrooms and seeing the way that our teachers engage with our students, I'm sure that what you see down here at the bottom right, where you see the youngster standing up there with her, I'm sure that is very common practice in our schools and in our classrooms, but that's something that I can get some specific information about, to just kind of like, give you quantifiably when are we actually having the students begin that process.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. McCoy, ready for you when you are.
Good evening, everyone. So in our Woodlands Middle High School, we talk about curriculum and science dimensions, explore in 7th and 8th grade. Exploring Learning is an online lab platform. Castle Learning is the Regents Review, an exam preparation for Regent courses. And Connie is the online textbook platform for our IB science classes. Along with our science curriculum, we have an enrichment program. We are forced this year to be with clubs. And we have a very big population of our clubs this year with the Association of Black Engineers, which our advisor, Mr. S, does, our Animal Care and Hospital Club, our Science Honor Society, and our Academic Challenge. Our clubs this year we've had a great turnout with our clubs, and it's a great extension of the classroom.
Mr. McCoy, could you just tell us a little bit about what each one of these clubs actually does? I mean, what is like the focus of their activities? I mean, I can sort of tell from, but I'd just like to know a little bit more about what they are actually doing.
Okay, so our Academic Challenge, what Mr. Washington does is pretty much an extension of the classroom, where they're challenging students and it's more of the curriculum. In our Science Honor Society, that's a select group of students. It's not, students don't choose, it's a select. Our Animal Care, there are certain animals. We have lizards, there's a snake, turtle, and the students are taking care of those animals. And our Association of Black Engineers, Mr. S, is teaching them different activities. And that is a new club that actually started, I think, right before COVID started.
None of these clubs actually send kids out to any sort of internship or anything like that, or they're all in-house activities.
Correct. I know before COVID started, some of these, the Animal Care, I believe, would take some field trips and things like that, but we haven't done that obviously since COVID.
So I just want to say something to you, and I have repeatedly made this offer ever since I've been on this board, but animal care and husbandry is actually an important part of research, biological research, biochemistry research, and all companies, pharmaceutical, biotech companies, academic research institutions have significant animal care facilities, right? That, Greenburgh could send its students to for internships, because this is actually a very, it's complicated, especially when you're taking care of, experimental animals. Some of them are, don't have immune systems. Some of them need to be fed special diets or live under special conditions. So I'm just saying, this is something to think about, that, these clubs could be extended to practical work. We happen to live in an area that's very rich in both bioindustry and academia. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there again.
That's something that I can talk to Ms. Belfiore about and have a discussion with her.
Yeah. And let me tell you something, these institutions would welcome a serious, kid that was, meticulous, because this is, they're always hurting for people to take care of the animals. So. We can't, you're muted. You're muted.
I apologize. Was trying to move the screen over. In grade 7, we have Science 7 and Science 7 honors. Grade 8, Science 8 and Science 8 honors for Earth Science, and then Living Environment and Biological honors, Earth Science, Chemistry honors, and then in 11th grade, we have Chemistry and Physics with IB, Environmental Science and Societies, and then in 12th grade with Physics, and then we also have the IB with Chemistry and Environment Science and Design.
So are we still missing APIB Physics? Is that still not on our roster?
These are
I see that we have.
Yes, so these are actually the courses that were published in the catalog for next year. So
Okay.
looking at it, I do not see, you're saying IB Physics?
There's not an IB
Yes.
Physics. Physics is just Regents Physics.
Right.
And
Right.
we do not have an AP offering on physics unless there was introduced next year, but the physics is just Regents Physics, and IB is only the chemistry and environmental
Chemistry,
science.
yeah.
Grades. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this also has been an ongoing discussion, and I know that these teachers may be difficult to find, but I think if we are going to really continue with an IB diploma program, I think making kids do IB chemistry, I mean, they're smart kids and I'm sure they can handle it, but why? I mean, I think it's really time to have IB Physics, actually IB biology as well. I'm just saying.
Well, Ty, I agree with you on it, and it's a bit challenging because a lot of kids who are in this doing the IB diploma end up doing biology and then chemistry in 10th grade, and then they're doing chemistry again, and they're we
No,
we
I
did
know.
shorten it so that, I mean, it's great because next year we are giving students an opportunity to do physics, which they didn't have in their initial IB classes. So the 11th graders now have an opportunity to do physics next year, which they didn't have before. So that's
Right.
great. So we do have a class getting there, but yes, it would be great to see more diversity in
But
that.
it's not an IB diploma class still, right? Is that what you're?
The physics is just a Regents class, correct?
It's just a Regents class, right? Yeah. Okay.
I have a quick question.
So yes, sorry.
What is the science electives? Is that like they just choose one of those courses as a senior? I'm just.
No, you know what?
Right.
I actually can illustrate some of those for you, but I would have to stop sharing my screen. You know what? Let me stop sharing the screen and I will pull up the actual course catalog, if that's okay. Yeah, and we can just give me a second because I'm kind of modifying on this spot.
Kelly, I know there are ones in there that are like, a weather related one. There's an astronomy related one. I know they've changed it over the years, but they're just more like core focus types of science courses.
Okay. I'm like looking at them. I'm like, is it that they just get to select from those? Because those look like
No, and it's usually junior, senior year after you've met your regents requirements, if you're going down that track. So you have your biology and chemistry, and then junior, senior year, you have that opportunity. If you don't want to take physics or you're not doing an IB diploma program, there's options in the different science courses you can take that are more of a core focus type of science course.
That's good to know.
There must be a sort of a flow chart, right? I mean, that, you know, that, I don't know if Dr. Macaluso is going to talk to us about this, where certain science courses are coupled with certain math levels. And then there are some, I mean, it's a little tricky actually to, I don't know at what point the kids in Greenburgh can do these, can actually have the time in their schedules to choose these sorts of electives, science electives. I don't know if we're going to hear about that, but.
So I can I don't have it. So as I show you the course catalog, I will be able to, I should have included it in the slide deck. The same table that we showed you for science, we have a version of it for math. And so it's kind of a one-to-one correspondence, but it's not actually side by side. I should have actually provided that for you. But let me start off by sharing the screen for the course catalog. Since the question is here, we can just modify in live time and show you what that looks like. I have a larger one to share. Hold on. Okay, so so we have adventures in physics, anatomy and physiology, marine life biological studies. And that is, I believe that is our elective. No, we have a couple more. Okay, so here are our science electives. Here, okay, intro to forensics, half credit, introduction to engineering, another half credit, natural disasters, 1 credit. So what Dr. Drogic was asking about, kind of like this tree, which are useful documents to have for showing kind of like how we would create a pathway for students. So you'll see here that if a student took chemistry and earth science, this is a course that would be suitable for them to advance their science thinking. Natural disasters, same kind of thing. Chemistry, earth science would be a prerequisite for that. And then we have anatomy and physiology, which is a 1 credit full year course, adventures in physics, and it gives a description of what they are. And then we have marine life biological studies. And so what that looks like for math is as follows. So this doesn't have the 7th and 8th grade added. 7th grade, we have math 7. 8th grade, we have math 8 and or algebra. So if a child at 8th grade, if you imagine if I had a chart up here and there was grade 8, and I completed a algebra regents in grade 8, then I would go likely to geometry honors in 9th grade, followed by algebra 2 trig with honors. And then I have all these options for IB courses. If I'm an advanced student, but I'm not necessarily trying out this pathway where I would take some IB classes, we would give you, and you haven't taken algebra in 8th grade, you would do or maybe you did take algebra in 8th grade. Okay, you can go into, again, geometry, algebra 2, right? So if I didn't take 8th grade algebra, I would go into algebra here, then I would go into geometry, and then you would kind of match that with the science offerings. And so that's the way we're dovetailing our science and math curriculum. Okay. And let me also show you, since we talked about science electives, let me go ahead and show you some math electives. So here you see, going back to Dr. Drogic's intro, where she talked about, how do you use data to tell a story? Statistics is where we would kind of combine, again, what you saw with that life science example with the eggs, right? And so, once we do predict that the nest should be an equal portion of male and female alligators, what actually becomes reality? So that's statistics, right? I might predict that it would be a 50-50 mix of male and females, but in reality, it usually comes out to be like a 40-60 split or something like that, because nature maybe has a pattern, but it's not always predictable because it's nature. And that's what statistics is all about. We have applied mathematics for college, consumer math, and math analysis and approaches year 1 and year 2. So those are our electives. Curiosity that I have, and since we're having a very open conversation about this and the parents are giving some great feedback, there was this request to look into physics options and maybe some AP physics. Something that I noticed that we don't offer in Greenburgh that is also a way to have some advanced coursework is through College Link. Do parents have any feedback that they'd like to share either way about interest and maybe possibilities for College Link?
Sorry, can you describe what that is? I'm not familiar with
I
it.
was just
So-
going to say the same thing. I'm like, I don't know
Typically
what
what College Link is you can find a local university. In many cases, you try to go with a SUNY because credit at SUNY could be used throughout any of the SUNYs. So the challenge with College Link is you're not guaranteed that a college will accept it. So what you do is you make an arrangement with a college to have one of your faculty members teach it at a college level. And assuming you pass, you get credit, of course, at that college. But then there's also many colleges that accept it through reciprocity. So for example, if we had a partnership with a SUNY, more likely than not, that course would be accepted across the SUNY and or CUNY system. It varies when it becomes private. Sometimes a private school might recognize it, but as a elective. But there's usually a very good chance that if you pair it with a college or university that's like a SUNY or CUNY, chances are it would be accepted many places. I mean, I would do some further research in it if the parents had an interest in it. Sometimes what happens though with it is you do have to pay a small fee. So the college or university would negotiate that, as you're taking it into school, you might have to pay like $250 for the year and, for the whole course. And assuming again, that the child passed it satisfactorily, you would get that college credit. You would get 3 credits in statistics and that's whatever in a college that's maybe MTH 150. It's not a basic math class at the college level. It's considered, it's considered a recognizable course.
So would that be like at Westchester Community, or would that be online, or what is the practical aspect of these?
So the way that it's done is you have to find a teacher who, first of all, will be interested in it. And then they have to send their resume or CV to the college or the university. And if the college or university determines that they meet their expectations to be a college level professor, then they are allowed to teach the course. And then they teach the course. They have a syllabus. So if you taught forensics and it was a college link with, let's say, Syracuse, that course would be equivalent to earning credit for forensics at Syracuse or some other university that would accept that as a reciprocal course.
But
So
as
it's
an
not the kid.
outlay,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. I'll try to be brief. As an outlay for the district, if there's training, certification, a cost, a limit potentially to which colleges accept which, wouldn't we be better directing our curriculum toward advanced high school mathematical performance and then partnering with our advising and counselors to look toward a CLEP exam? Because what I'm hearing you say is that the equivalent of this would be to take a CLEP exam and exempt out of or earn credit for those first couple of years of college credits in a math, but you could do that at the same cost if you were a student who were interested in that without having to put the district and the teachers through the extra hoops.
Yep. Valid point. Yep.
I think also, I believe we had something like this a few years ago with the introduction for the IB diploma program, just to point out that any students taking the IB diploma program, if they are successful in their scores on those exams, are essentially, IB credits. They could get credit for math in college that way with those courses. So, but I do think, Samantha, that's a great idea with the CLEP exams, because I've, been reading more about those too, right, as an option, without I don't know what the cost of those are, but I know for those tuition credits, I think we had one in connection with SUNY before, but it is, as you mentioned, Dr. Macaluso, the cost and the parents had to pay those tuition credits or some kind of fee with it without a guarantee that a school would accept it. So the CLEP might be more financially feasible as an option as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
I love the idea, but I'm coming as a newbie. I really do not fully have full understanding of what it's like in a high school. I'm just sort of going into that direction. So I'm learning a lot as I'm hearing what everyone is saying. But I love the idea of them being able to take college classes. But from what it sounds like, the IB classes also count as college courses. Is that what you're saying, Donna?
Well, if there are exams at the end of them, so if you think about it along the lines of what an AP is, the IB is a different program structure. But if there's, depending on their scores and then depending on the college and university, it is recognized as, along with like an AP exam that would, qualify them depending on the school to exempt them from a course. Honestly, in the college process right now, I'm finding that a lot more places you have to have, they're up to, they used to take 3s, now they're 4s. Some places are saying they're only if you have a 5 will they accept it. And even if they accept it, it's not necessarily reducing your course load. They'll just place you into a higher level course. So that all said, I am also realizing, just being in this stage, that the rigor behind that is really good. And I think that it does prepare them really well. So even if it's not going to save you financially or time-wise in school necessarily, depending on where it is. And but I think the rigor behind it is really great and it's a good challenge for them. So.
Okay. So I guess my only concern then with the college, what did you call it again? College
Link.
College Link. The only concern would be for children that can't afford the courses. Like, how would that, to make it equitable for all children? Like, if there's a child that is capable of taking the courses and has the ability to take the courses, but financially can't afford to take the courses, would the district pay for that child to take courses like that? I don't know. That's what I would be more concerned with when it comes to something where you might have to come out of pocket.
I just have a comment from our superintendent, who unfortunately is kind of straddling 2 meetings. So she says that in terms of this college credit, that at least for IB, you don't have to be in the full program to get the credits that Donna was talking about. You just have to score well enough. But now the question is, what score would a college require? If now they're requiring a 5 for AP courses, does that mean that they're going to require a 6 or 7 for an IB course to give you credit?
It really varies.
So she says also,
Yeah. So yes,
I'm sorry, so she says also SUNY colleges have given many of our IB students credit. That's another comment.
It varies quite significantly from school to school.
Sure.
Is the experience of it. So there's really not an answer on that.
Right.
That's exactly, and the way you described it prior, Ms. Morton, was spot on. Yes, because there's always so one school might accept at one point there were schools that used to accept a 3 for AP statistics, and they would give you credit. Now, not so many, not so much. But yeah, there's always some sort of option with it. And the college link piece, the piece with that is again, so if it was with the SUNY, and again, Dr. Iverson is also spot on, right? So many of our IB courses do translate over, but in the app, what I was trying to kind of get some feedback on is in the absence of a course that might be useful for a student for some sort of advanced pathway that isn't connected to something closely IB, would we want an option of, that, but all those other pieces that we talked about. And then with the piece with students who could not afford the fee that is typically associated with the college reporting or accepting the credit and then, reporting it on a transcript, there's always federal programs available, and the district does receive federal programs that do allow to provide equitable access for those kinds of things. But that's just to answer the question, not to say that we're looking into it or investing in it. It's just a thought that I put out there because I knew, we were on that same track of just discussing options. So that was actually the end of our slide deck, I believe. Let me just go back. So, yep, the high school course offerings. I'll stop sharing that document and I'll go back to the PowerPoint. And okay, so then the last thing that we had was more of, if Mr. McCoy is just students engaging with inquiry and various, go ahead. All you, sir, if you have anything you want to go ahead.
This slide here just shows how our teachers have our students active, by doing a lot of activities and things like that, and getting them involved, and it's more of hands-on activities.
So these are actual labs that are associated with the various coursework.
Correct.
Correct.
Can I just ask you, are we as a district well equipped to do physics, chemistry, bio labs? I mean, do we actually have the resources and reagents necessary for this?
Oh, absolutely, Dr. Drogic. The school has a budget. Every school has a STEM budget. And so schools regularly order things and, comes through me for the approval process. And so I certainly look through that. And so they definitely are resources.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to thank you going through this. I did want to ask, well, 2 points. While we have resources in the school, the other thing that we do have that I think could be more utilized or better utilized is that we have beautiful acreage surrounding all of our schools. I do know that Mr. Tokarski takes his class out sometimes. I know Miss Belfiore takes her class out. So at the high school level, middle school, I think they do utilize it. When my older son was at Bailey, they actually went into the creek behind Bailey, and they had a special course that went on. I don't believe that's still being continued. And even students at Jackson, because you're back up right to Woodlands property there. So I would love to see more engagement of going out to the lake and walking around outside, and especially at the elementary age. The other thing I wanted, sorry.
Totally agree. I'm sorry. I just want to say I totally agree. And I just want to tell you that one of my fondest memories from Woodlands was going down to that pond and taking water. And that was when I saw my first hydra.
And I mean, it would be great if we could even have some sort of summer program that went on, and if we could have some sort of sponsored program. I mean, as you're saying, we have a lot of companies around. I wonder if there could be, I know other schools. I have a friend who's got a student at New Rochelle High School. They have a whole science academy that students can sign up for in the summertime. That would be a great thing. The other thing I wanted to ask about was what the plans are for the district. I know COVID has kind of thrown us off track, but we had started participating in the Tri-County Science Fair, and that was really 7th grade up. But then it was brought down to Bailey, not required at Bailey level, but we were getting probably at least a dozen students volunteering to participate in that. And the last year that we did that, Mr. Tokarski was great. He volunteered to help those students form their hypothesis and give feedback on their projects. But I think it's really important that we get back on track, as they did host the fair virtually this year. I don't know that anyone participated, but getting students involved in that earlier and building their confidence and getting them engaged in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade before they're in middle school, I just think that needs to be re-energized.
So I am in complete agreement with what Donna said, and once again, I think that really our high school needs a science research program, even if it just starts with one student. That's all it takes. You have to start somewhere, right? You just need one student who's interested and one teacher who's willing to mentor that student. And when I had my own lab, I had several high school students transition, and it is a commitment for a lab. But when you have a student who is really, I mean, it can just awaken. I mean, it can change a kid's life to do this sort of thing. And it just takes, even if it's just one, it's really worth it. It's one teacher, one student. And once again, I'm willing to help because I've been through the whole process multiple times. So I know how it's supposed to work. It's really important to start this. It's really important to catch these kids who have the ability and who maybe think they have the interest, or anyway. I've said enough. Please, let's just do it.
Yeah, and one last point too. I'd like to understand where we are with technology related to science. So several years ago, the district bought some 3D printers. We bought Now robots, and I was really excited that when they introduced those, there would be some great learning. Unfortunately, I think there were some issues with training that I don't know how well those were utilized. My son was at Highview. He got to do 1 year. They had a great opportunity, and he worked with the veterinary office in Hartsdale, and they built a prosthetic leg for a dog at in Highview. They worked on the program, and then it kind of just stopped. I've never seen the now robots really used. I think they pulled them out, but I just want to say, like, it's not just the curriculum. I think the hands-on experience is really critical. And in addition to getting outside, the technology is imperative if they want to survive in this world. And so where are we with plans in incorporating the tech side of science?
So all I will say at this point is one of the things that I appreciated about coming to Greenburgh is the belief that there was an active parent and guardian group that would give us feedback about what we're providing. So I have and that's why I had to pause the camera for a second and when Ms. Johnson was speaking, because I realized I did not bring a pen to my space. I have about 2 pages of notes. So I say to you, thank you so much for giving us this space to share what we have going on in the district with respect to science, but then also giving us your candid feedback about what are the things that you hope to see happening in our classrooms and how we can further strengthen all the wonderful things that are happening in this district, including bringing our kids outside, which is definitely something that I remember when I was contemplating joining the Greenburgh team. I was like, wow, the best thing about Greenburgh is their campuses are amazing. And so, really making sure that we leverage that and use it to bring the outdoor classroom in and the indoor classroom out is something that we will continue to provide. So with that, I say to the community, please remember to vote. And so because vote for our budget, because all of the things that we hope to do, including provide professional development for our teachers on how to continue to develop curriculum and how to continue to use all those wonderful technology resources that you said we have, such as 3D printers, so that we can continue the curriculum development and continue to provide a world-class education for our students. So with that, I say thank you. I will take my very best at updating the slide deck before it's posted on the website with all the feedback that you gave. And so this might be some additional information there for you. And again, if there's any additional questions or thoughts, please always call Curriculum and Instruction, or email is also a great way of communicating.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for those of you who attended. I hope other parents watch this presentation and take a look at the slide. And we will have one more committee meeting before the end of the school year. And I think we're probably going to be discussing our IB program. So stay tuned. All right.
Good night.
Everyone, good night.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Right, folks.
Bye-bye.
So much.
Thank you.